to know you're in here. How you feel, fellas? Hey, Jam! Sure getting down. But gotta take you higher. Ow! All right. You want to do it again? You want to do it again, huh? Yeah, let's go on.
Hi, this is Sherita J, and it's Drive Time with me and my special guest today. I'm very excited. Well, actually, at first I was floored because my special guest just blew me away with his story, and by the time he got through talking to me about it, I said, you have to come on my show. Well, you know that Sherita J with Drive Time, it's about empowering community, not only with nonprofit and grants and how can we help with for-profit, nonprofit collaborations to sustain communities, but it's also about who can we highlight that wants to make a difference, because there's no way that my organization can do it all alone. So that's why you see me traveling the globe and meeting with different individuals and helping develop nonprofits all over the world so that we all can make a difference for whatever cause that we really want to champion. Well, my special guest today is Mr. Keith A. Summers, and I'm not going to keep us long because he has such a unique story, he has a unique life, and I just can't wait for you guys to hear about him. And so he's a young man that had the stars of Hollywood in his eyes ever since he was around 5 years old. He grew up in, I think it's southeastern Philadelphia, and he came to Hollywood with those stars in his eyes and was living the life, and had a tragedy that happened on Sunset Boulevard. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to introduce you to Mr. Keith A. Summers, my special guest. Thank you so much for being here with me.
Well, thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure.
Good, good, good. I want to first talk about, I want to first go straight into the story that you started telling me on why did you start Summers Drive. It's Summers Drive Alive Foundation, correct?
Correct. Summers Drive Alive Foundation was started as the result of my personal life and experience and strength. Mm-hmm. At the age of 5, I was dancing and singing and acting in southeastern Pennsylvania. It's the suburbs of Philadelphia, Montgomery County. And that segued into doing some modeling, and from modeling, some more professional dancing. Mm-hmm. I studied at Philadelphia College of Performing Arts by taking jazz and dance there. I danced with a jazz company called Waves, and then a little male dance company called Chippendales.
Ah, that looks good, yeah.
And then I realized the ceiling was pretty low as where I could go from there. And my delusions of grandeur had me believing that Hollywood needed me. So, in October of 1986, I put all the clothes in the back of my Z28 Camaro. Mm-hmm. Went to AAA and got a road map to take a southern routed portion to come out here during the snow, sleet, and ice of October in the East Coast. And I came out to California ready to put my name next to a gold star on Hollywood Boulevard. That was the loftiest goal I had entertained at the time of my departure, when I kissed Mom and Dad and said, I'll see you next when my name is next to a gold star on Hollywood Boulevard.
Okay.
To say that it didn't go the way I planned is a gross understatement. Mm. What I didn't understand at the time is I came out here and did what we call in the sober community is a geographic. I took my addiction of drugs and alcohol with me. And we learned in the program of sobriety that when you do a migration, a relocation, or a geographic, that the same faulty software that you entertain between your ears, it's not a matter of will it culminate to consequence and toxicity. It's a matter of when and to what degree of impact.
Okay, now, so when you say are you saying that when you came to California that there was already an addiction?
Already.
Okay.
I came out, in the spirit of full disclosure, I came out to California in possession of marijuana and cocaine and a bottle of top-shelf vodka called Pop-Offs in the trunk of my Z28 Camaro. I had my hair fashioned like Prince in the Purple Rain album and a Mr. T starter kit around my neck. Okay? So when I came to California, when I said I came out disillusioned, I mean it just that.
Yes, okay.
And the first job I got was doing security at the ABC studios for the Gary Shandling show. And I was doing the old proverbial D-Tex clock rounds where you had to go around finding skeleton keys at 14 indiscriminate spots in the studio and putting in the side of my D-Tex clock to register the position and the
Right.
time and the location.
Right.
That's where the old guard rounds came into play. And after 2 days of doing that job, which took 45 minutes to do one round for 14 keys and write a 10-minute log, give me a 5-minute rest period, the second day I saw the patrol supervisor come around to my guard shack and I said, "How do I get to do your job?" He says, "Well, see all the stuff in my belt?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, it comes with more responsibility." So, being the narcissist with the inferiority complex that I was, I did my research, and within 24 hours, I was enrolled in the Southern California Rapid Transit District Police Department Academy. To younger generation, that'd be a Metro cop.
Okay.
I was going to go to the RTD, and I was going to work as a police officer 2, which is the officers that work in the money room. And 2 weeks before I graduated, I changed security jobs, and I'm working on Rodeo Drive. And Mr. Elton John and his bodyguard came in. And the same way I did with my patrol supervisor with that security company, I asked that bodyguard, "How do I get to do
How
your
do you
job?"
have to do that?
And he says, well, he showed me his gold LAPD shield. He was a retired LAPD officer, and he was Mr. John's full-time bodyguard. Well, long story short, he gave me his business card. I submitted a resume and got hired. The company was handled by 2 off-duty LAPD officers, a sergeant lieutenant. I did that job for 6 years. I was an independent contractor. My official title was Executive Protection Specialist. I was a bodyguard for celebrities and the stars that you see and hear about on TV.
Okay.
And at the end of my reign, I was working with Milli Vanilli. And I was standing there, as you see, between Rob and Fad when they came at Sunset Gower Studios and told the world that they were lip syncing. I was wearing a blue Italian suit standing between both of them. My drug and alcohol addiction had ascended, or I guess culminated, to a toxic level that was volatile. I was drinking from the time I got up in the morning to the time I went to sleep. The first thing I put in my mouth was a marijuana cigarette. I would do everything but put a needle in my body to fix the pain between my ears. We learned in sobriety that alcohol and drugs is just a symptom of the problem.
What was the problem? And that isn't it. Do you mind me asking?
Not at
Because
all.
that's not what I was going to ask, but we didn't get into that part of it. Did you discover what the problem was?
Absolutely. It's a spiritual malady.
Okay.
I forgot that I'm a spiritual being having a human
Okay.
experience. And I didn't know that feelings weren't facts. I didn't know that how I felt wasn't a true calibration on how well I was doing. And I didn't have an identity as a child. Of mixed race, I'm black, Italian, and East Indian. And I remember distinctly in the 2nd grade coming off the school bus, pulling frantically on the front door and asking my mom, "Please open the door, open the door, open the door." After she does so, I come barreling inside. She grabs my face and she holds me and says, "Keith, what's wrong with you?" Once I got eye contact with my mother, I started bawling like a baby. She says, "Keith, why are you crying?" I asked my mom a life-defining question. I said, "Mom, am I white?" She says, "Why would you ask that?" I said, "Well, the black kids say I'm a gray boy, I'm a half-breed, I'm a mutt, I'm a zebra, I'm an Oreo. I skateboard and I roller skate, and black kids don't do that. So, Mom, am I white?" She waits till my father gets home, takes me in the master bedroom, and they impart their pearls of wisdom. My dad proceeds to tell me this is where I get the attributes and characteristics from him. And my mom did the same. Well, like a kid listening to a Charlie Brown episode, all I heard was adults going, wah, 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 wah.
Okay.
And so at that moment, I had a disconnect with my own identity.
Yeah.
So now I'm flailing around because it's your mother and your father, the paternal influence and the maternal influence that basically anchors you to your identity as a child.
Right.
I didn't have that. Mine was disconnected. So I found my social milieu on others who also didn't have that inner identity, that identity of self-worth.
Though it wasn't from the same same source, but the connection was that they were lost somewhere too.
And it's shown by how kids act out.
Yes.
I was a
yes.
disruptive kid. I was a class clown. I was a kid that was out to get the attention at all costs. But at the time, they didn't have all these nice quip sayings and definers of what a child was going through.
Right.
Back in the 60s and 70s when I was raised.
Right.
Now they have
right.
attention deficit disorder and all these other things. And it wasn't addressed till later on, that after I had so many detentions and so many parent-teachers meetings that my father said, Keith, if it was one teacher or two teachers, it would be personality crash. You have 5 majors and every one of your teachers wants a sit down. So if something's wrong here, let's address it. And I'm like, Dad, leave me alone, I can do this.
Yes.
Well, my drug and alcohol addiction started when I was basically 12 years old.
Wow. And then we fast forward, and that brings you now to California. You're
Yes.
standing there with Milli Vanilli.
Yeah. And my drug
From
and alcohol
there.
addiction was off the chain, as they say. I signed a good contract with a producer turned headline act on Friday, November 13th. I went out Saturday, November 14th to the Roxbury nightclub, which is no longer there in Sunset Strip.
Celebrating.
I had life by the proverbial cojones, I thought at the time. And when I left the club at 12:30, I was halfway down the back stairwell when I got talked into going back up and sitting at a table that was going to be financially satisfied by a mutual acquaintance. I went back up. At 2 o'clock, I closed the club after drinking my kamikazes and Heinekens, and I was going to go to an after party in Beverly Hills. I went down, jumped in my Jaguar XJS V12, and I took off westbound down Sunset. I drove 1.0 miles. I was positioned right in front of Tower Records when my car went across the double yellow line. I hit a Chevy Chevette almost head on, and I instantaneously killed the 19-year-old driver named Angel behind the wheel.
Wow.
That was my second DUI. The first one occurred during the Rodney King Reginald Dinner riots of May of 1992. If you remember, Los Angeles was on a curfew.
Yes.
I didn't consider myself black enough to be on curfew, so I took my high yellow behind to Thousand Oaks Red Onion, and I incurred my very first DUI at a CHP sobriety checkpoint. No accident, no injury. So 6 months later, in November of 1992, when I crashed my car and ended a life, injured 3 other people in the vehicle,
Oh my God.
3 other people in the taxi behind that, LA County had the discretion to charge me with Penal Code 187, murder in the second degree. They exercised that discretion and got a conviction for murder in the second degree. I was sentenced to California State Prison for a term of life.
So you're sitting here after 18 years
After 18
because
years,
of your tenacity.
3 months and 8 days, I refused to believe that I was going to spend the rest of my life in prison. Though there was many days I would cry to myself in my pillow in my prison cell, God take me, God take me. Don't leave me around for this. Heal my family, heal their heart, heal their minds, heal their souls, but take me from this pain, this misery. It's not worth living for. Why didn't you take me in that accident instead of Angel? Why?
Right.
Since I've gotten out, I've been asked to speak within the AA sober community, and I've done so consistently for 4 years. I never say no to an AA request whenever I have the capacity of doing so. In November of 2011, I spoke at a young person's meeting on Abbot Kinney in Venice, and at the end of my share, a young girl came up to me at the end and said, "You don't know what you did." And I said, "What do you mean?" And she was bawling her eyes out.
Yes.
And she proceeded to tell me that she wasn't planning on being at that meeting, but she was going to come at the behest of her friend, then go home, take pills, drink, and end her life.
And she was blessed to hear you.
She
My
said,
God.
"I heard your story, and if you can go through it, so can I."
Yes.
June 5th of 2014, I spoke at a young person's meeting on Ohio Street, and almost identically the same scenario unfolds. A girl waits to the end of the thank the speaker line. I'm the guest speaker. She comes up, she holds my single hand with both of her hands, and hysterically she says, "You don't know what you just did. You don't know what you just did."
Wow.
And she tells me that she was going to commit suicide that night. Then my higher power told me in the core of my soul, "Do you now know why I saved you? Do you now know why you endured this?"
Yes. Yes. Well, you know, the thing is that a colleague a long time ago, I heard her say, gifts that we're handed aren't always in beautiful paper. Sometimes they're wrapped in sandpaper, and they scratch a little bit as you open them. And what you have done and decided to do in touching the lives, even though a life was lost. And I know that that family and those that were involved, there was pain. And there's pain that so many of us go through in life. But I can imagine that that family, there's also been some rainbows that they've experienced since this incident, that they've experienced some beautiful things, and that they probably don't even realize that it was because of Angel that was in their life. And all of us are here for such a short period of time, and there's no guide on how we're going to leave here, and how much pain we may experience because we lose someone. But the fact is that you've taken your experience and you're touching lives, and it's who you are. I mean, like I said, your tenacity and the way that you look at something and you move toward it, even the way that you did in security, which got you. Every step that I've learned, every step that we experience in our life, it's to get us to what we had no idea was up ahead. And one of the best examples I've seen of that, believe it or not, is a cartoon. And there's this little man, a stick man. You may have seen it. I got it on email. And he's carrying this cross, and he's leaning way over, and he's dragging, and you see about 10 people in the background, and he wants it cut off. And so he says, "Ugh!" And next frame, he's cutting and cutting. He's down on one knee. The first thing I thought is, where the heck did he get that axe? Because he's a stick man, and I didn't see it, right? But anyway, the next frame, he's dragging, but it's not kicking up dirt as much. It's not as heavy. But the people in the background are bent way over, and they're dragging this cross. The next frame, he's like, "Ugh!" looking up at God again. And I'm like, okay, what is it now? And he's down on one knee, chopping again, and wood chips are flying everywhere. And then, so now the next time you see him, he's whistling, and he's carrying this cross, but it's cut off way up by his knee. And then the next thing you know, ugh! And I'm like, well, what now? Well, it pans out so you can see a wide view. He's standing there at this huge ravine, but the cross is so short, he's leaning on it. But everyone else that drugged their cross, that their journey was hard, they laid it across that ravine and were able to use it as a bridge. So again, the things that we experience in life is preparing us. It's exercising your bounce back muscle. It's helping us to know how we need to touch lives. And so again, I'm so honored to meet you. I'm excited to hear about what you're doing with your nonprofit. So tell us about the mission of Summers Drive Alive Foundation.
Well, taking my experience, strength, and hope, I developed a mission statement, which is, I believe, pretty simple to comprehend. The mission of Summers Drive Alive Foundation is to educate at-risk youth about the risks and consequences of distracted and impaired driving. What a lot of people are unaware of is distracted driving has surpassed overdose and suicide as the #1 cause of death amongst teenagers in the United States of America.
Wow. Wow.
It's the pink elephant that's not being addressed. Though many people have heard stories of people texting, using mobile phones, putting on makeup, messing with drive-through food items, Starbucks coffee bean,
whatever.
Things that take your attention off of the focus and attentiveness required to operate a deadly weapon, which is a vehicle. And they're losing their lives at a very rapid rate. And I am hoping to educate youth by doing what I've done in the sober community, doing outside. We believe in sobriety that if a person comes into 12-step recovery and if surrendered just for that moment to the process, they're at our 4th step, ready to go into the inventory. But I've spoken at USC for an organization called The Haven, which is a sober alternative place. And I've seen the impact. It was equally as polarizing amongst the college students as it was and is for those who attend 12-step recovery. And the difference being, those who are in the rooms of recovery have already come to the comprehension that something's wrong, there's a problem, and they're at the entrance gate of the lifelong journey of physical and emotional sobriety. Those who are not in 12-step recovery, who are not taking that inside introspection, that inventory, think, oh, this is just the way it is. And really, it doesn't have to be that way. And one of the greatest things I see on a consistent basis is when people are sitting in attendance at 12-step recovery, it's the ability of someone to relate to another and them saying audibly or silently, you know what? Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. I'm not alone. Someone else has gone through this, as you just gave the scenario. Someone else has carried this cross, endured, and persevered, and now they're able to pass it back. We practice in recovery that no matter how far down the path you've gone, you'll find how your experience, strength, and hope can benefit others. It's one of the promises. And it's also one of the promises that you'll neither regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. And no way in my natural mortal comprehension could I have taken an assessment of what I've done on November 15th and serving the 18 years, 3 months in a state prison with a life sentence. No way I could have embodied that and said, this is now going to go forward and bring love and light and healing and wholeness and recovery and redemption and second chances to others.
Well, I know that, without a doubt, my listening audience is wondering, if you were serving life and after 18 years you're sitting here, how did you get out of prison?
I believe that all of my challenges to the conviction itself were going to succeed. Through the love of my mother and father and my best friend Dorothy, who has passed, and others giving of themselves, they were able to finance my legal defense and fighting my conviction of murder in the second degree for the DUI, single fatality, and other injuries.
18 years.
And after 10 years, I had exhausted all the state and federal court systems and challenging the conviction. So the only legal wrangling I had left was challenging the Board of Parole hearings and challenging their determination on whether I was suitable for parole. Meaning, ultimately, did I pose an imminent threat to society if released from custody? And because the penal parole system is so politically estranged, and there's a phrase called the Willie Horton-esque syndrome. Willie Horton, make a long story short, was a convicted felon in Massachusetts.
Okay.
Governor Dukakis was the governor. He signed the paperwork that let him out of custody. After getting released from custody, he committed unspeakable acts of criminality.
Oh.
That, in turn, created political suicide for Governor Dukakis. So no governor since then wants to put their name on a document authorizing release of a convicted felon.
Right, right.
California's penal system is such that in order for a lifer to get released, the ultimate review process requires the seated governor using his gubernatorial powers to decree, I hereby authorize his or her release.
So that's also what happened with Tookie Williams with Governor Schwarzenegger.
They don't want to be the one to say, I am soft on crime. I don't feel the crime committed warrants them to be punished for life. These are how they are looked at if they put the pen to paper and endorse the release of a convicted felon.
Okay.
So I, in turn, had to go to the judicial system. And I basically exhausted the financial wherewithal to amass a legal dream team. So I had to study the law myself. And I told my family, this is the only alternative I have left. So the only thing I did from the time I woke up to the time I went to sleep is study the law. And I became my own attorney, and I filed over 30 cases in the state and federal court. And after 8 years of fighting and litigating for my own freedom, my first parole denial, which occurred January 3rd, 2002.
How do you remember all these dates that you...
They are indelibly etched into my psyche. Because it's kind of like asking a person who's endured the Janjaweed in Africa and the machetes of attack, or someone who's gone through apartheid like Stephen Biko. These are life-defining moments. And it was that denial of January 3rd, 2002 that I challenged on my own. And it reached the U.S. Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, the second highest court in the United States. And I was winning, and they were going to rule in my favor. And in so doing, they would have created a watershed. And what that means is every other life prisoner similarly situated to me, not only in California, but in Arizona, Washington, Oregon, Alaska, and Hawaii, all other states under the jurisdiction of the Ninth Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals, could have used my case law and gotten released.
Because that was my next question, why those particular states? Okay.
They're the ones that hold sway from the Ninth Circuit. They dictate and decree authority out of the judicial system. So to prevent that, they took me back to the parole board in July of 2009, found me suitable for parole. 5 months later, Arnold Schwarzenegger, seated governor of California, took no official position and declined review, meaning he did not touch the grant of parole issued by the California Board of Parole Hearings. 14 months later, on February 23rd, 2011, after serving 18 years, 3 months, and 8 days, convicted of murder in the second degree, I was released from Chucky's house, otherwise known as California State Prison Corcoran, where Charles Manson was incarcerated.
How did that happen without the governor?
One of the official decrees that a governor can do when he is or she is required to review a determination of parole suitability is not touch it. In other words, they are going to go by the determination of those whom they hired as the parole board members. In other words, I hired you to do this job and make a proper threat assessment on whether this individual poses an imminent risk of harm. If they don't, I'm standing on your determination as the de facto expert of this assessment. And therefore, one of the choices the governor has is decline review. Do not touch it. There's no gubernatorial DNA on any document. It comes from the office of the governor. His official position was decline review. So
I've always wondered, when something like that happens, at that moment when you found out that you're free, that now you can be freed, what was that like?
I had to wait 14 months to get released because they had made a mistake in my sentencing documents.
Oh my God,
And instead of getting out December 23rd, 2009, when Governor Schwarzenegger signed off saying I decline review, they held me incarcerated in California prison for 14 months beyond state law. And I didn't get out till February 23rd, 2011, when I should have gotten out December 23rd, 2009.
What can justify that?
There was none. On December 13th of 2013, after I'd gotten out, I proved in the California Superior Court that the sentence I received initially was illegal. So I proved that the 14 months that I was held after being found suitable and determined that you will be getting released, that I never should have served that 14 months.
So what happens with that proof?
Nothing has happened. I served 14 months beyond state law. But
at this point, you're just out. You're like,
I'm not living in the past. I'm living in the eternal now, as we say in recovery.
And making some strides. I'm so glad that, Holly with Haven House is how we met. And they're doing some great things at USC, and I think they're at another university. Is it in Michigan or somewhere?
I'm not sure, but yes, they are going across the globe.
But with what they're doing, it's helping young people that may experience some kind of substance abuse or something that would end up making them have to leave school. It's helping them to recover.
It's a viable alternative for that peer pressure that every child, every kid that's 18, that's just graduated high school, thinks that, this is my first full-on board dose of freedom. I have absolute liberty.
They can drink and stay out all night.
I can experiment. I can try. I can use recreational drugs. I can do whatever my heart desires, and no one's there to tell me no.
And so with that comes all of those other things, from addiction to sometimes losing their life.
Exactly.
So.
Or being responsible for taking someone else's life.
Yes. So with the Summers Drive for Life Foundation, what are some of your first goals? What are some of your first initiatives that you would like to accomplish?
I had already passed the Secretary of State assessment, and I have an EIN number. So I'm acknowledged by the state of California as a nonprofit.
Yes.
And now I'm going through the process of attaining my 501c3 endorsement from the IRS, Internal Revenue Service of the U.S. government.
Yes.
And then I'll be a full-fledged nonprofit entity in the United States of America. What we're trying to do is, say I go into a high school.
No,
like,
what you are going to do.
Yeah, when I go into like Palisades High School or
Yes.
Venice High School or Santa Monica High School, I want to address the causative factors that I experienced in my aberrant behavior, in my rebellion. That there's two types of people that pick up an electronic device knowing that there's been consequences experienced by others, but say, that's okay, it won't be me. And then the other half are those who have a big case of the, oh, F it, oh, screw it.
Yes.
And so my way of addressing that is addressing the mental construct that says, if I do this action and decide to text or use electronic device that takes my eyes off of operating a vehicle, I'm placing myself and the public entity at risk. And not just saying it theoretically, but having a personal experience with that assessment. I am hoping to use my experience, strength, and hope and give presentations in junior highs, high schools, and colleges to affect change, to cause a social movement.
Okay.
The electronic companies and alcohol manufacturer companies, just like the tobacco companies, they put little disclaimers on the sides of things. Please use responsibly. Please don't drink and drive. Tobacco companies, this has been known to cause cancer in laboratory animals. I'm asking them to step up. I'm asking them to take some of their market share, some of the profits that they derived from the 13 to 25-year-old demographic that I'm going to be speaking to.
Yes.
And say, we care about your child. We're not going to be the armchair tycoons that are going to amass great substantial wealth and not care the consequences they cause and how they contribute to the social ill of teenage injury, teenage death, preventable and premature situations. Had only they decided, let's step up, let's be proactive, let's do what we can to educate the youth about the safe and responsible use of what we manufacture, be it electronic device or alcoholic beverage.
Okay. Well, you know, speaking of these companies, I can't help but always throw in the opportunities for grant funding. And not only are there dollars to help to talk to individuals as far as to prevent substance abuse, but also what led you into using, which is self-esteem and leadership skills and sometimes bullying or whatever. And so those are dollars that you also can be looking at. So just while you were talking, I was typing in a few things, and there's a whole list here from Junior League of Charlottesville Community Grants to Junior League of, to the American Honda Foundation, American Legacy Foundation. Now, American Legacy has given over $150 million in grants to reduce tobacco and among youth. National and grassroots programs are supported, community-based efforts in new and better tobacco control. And so, but anything to do with substance abuse, the American Legacy Foundation would be outstanding for you. The other thing is, there are so many individuals that don't realize there's dollars to cover your costs to be speaking at these schools. You could be paying your honorarium so that you could touch their lives. So we'll talk more about that so that you can be identifying those dollars. There's something else that I wanted to ask you about. Now, as far as let's see, what is it here? Who are you hoping to sponsor you? Now, you talked about those companies, but you also
I'm looking to go into a community, kind of like what I used to do, like you said so eloquently, that a man's greatest asset is his past. And one of the things that we did, and I did as a bodyguard, as executive protection specialist, is we did this thing called advanced detail. Before we bring a client, say I'm taking Janet Jackson to New York to perform at the Garden, I have a detail of men that go there before she's expected to arrive.
Okay.
We surveil the area, the venue where she's going to be performing. We know where all the exits are, what the elevators are. We'll know who the staff is that's servicing the dressing room, the area, and providing her food and beverage.
Right.
We know where the hotel is logistically located to the venue where she's performing. We've notified law enforcement. We've notified the hospital. We make sure that her blood type's in the hospital. So these are some of the things that we do in advanced detail. While applying that same skills, logics, and skill sets that I've amassed in that vocation, I apply it to Summers Drive Alive Foundation. I want to go, say I work at go to Palisades High, or when I go to Palisades High, before I go there and do the presentation, I want to talk to the people who are the leaders of the community. I want to talk to the hardware store owner. I want to talk to the Pilates or the cardio bar studio or the Starbucks or the Coffee Bean, and let them know this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to shepherd in a social movement with the children who come into your store. The children who frolic and play in that little park over there called Palisades Park. I want to talk to the mothers and fathers who set up the parent-teachers associations of those schools ahead of time. So when I do the presentation and we crack that onion of ego and pride, the proverbial question is, now what? How do I crack them open like I did with those two girls in November of 2011 and June 5th of 2014?
Well, you won't have a problem doing that.
And then leave them. Because then I'm haunted going, what happened the next day? Or what happened the following day? Well, I want to have like a triage where the people in the community are aware that we're coming out. I have the mental health experts, the social workers, Planned Parenthood, because there's girls that are pregnant that are not opening their mouths and telling others. They're going to do an abortion and everything else to keep it because of the social ill and stigma involved.
And oftentimes there's reasons they've gotten pregnant, whether it's self-esteem or whatever.
Those who are having, sexuality issues that want to come out and, be more honest with their identity. There's going to be an encampment of people who are going to be from that community, who are going to be there to basically say, you know what, me too.
Now, listening to you talk about all of your knowledge, even about security, did you know that under your nonprofit you can also have a job training security program that would be training young people to go into that? Your knowledge is so vast in that area. And just as you were talking, I looked up job training for security. And so now, this is why normally when I'm working with an organization and helping them develop their nonprofit, I ask them to not lock themselves into one area by the name. I know that it's Summers Drive Alive program, but it could be Drive Alive or Drive for Success program, and under it you have the Drive Alive project, you have security training, you have all these other things that are under your umbrella, so that it makes sense. Because Biden alone has now $450 million in federal job training grants. And all I typed in was job training and security. And so with your knowledge, there's a reason you gained that knowledge. You came here to act. You came here to get your star. But look at the path you took and the way you absorbed it like a sponge. There's a reason for that. And one of the things that when I listen to people and what they do, God allows us, He is the greatest GPS, and that GPS takes us over some bumpy roads sometimes. But I just always feel like if I keep God on my mind and I give Him praise and I operate in service, that path is going to take me somewhere. And I keep hearing that coming up in you. There's something you need to do with that knowledge and the contacts and the way that you just have the ability. Think of how many people probably wanted that same job. But it was your ability to just ask that question, but your presence. Someone else could ask that question and their presence would not have demanded the response that you received. You've got to do something with that.
Right. I am open. I'm not pigeonholing myself, as they say, or hamstringing myself to a certain action.
Yes.
Yes, it is a priority to educate the youth about the risks and consequences of distracted and impaired driving. If, and I've discussed this with some of my teammates, if it comes into our wheelhouse that there is another as immediate or more immediate need to be met from that demographic, and I'm equipped and able to address it, I will absolutely do so.
Well, you're in position because you're dealing with substance abuse and in those areas, which also goes with the distracted driving. But if you are also looking at training individuals that would be doing security, look how often you were in the arena and your clients were users. That those individuals that have gone through your program and now they've learned security, you're going to be touching individuals with your voice from another individual's training that you never would have touched before. And
I have sponsees in the program, and I tell them, you know, if money was the answer, where's Whitney Houston?
I was just going to bring up Whitney.
If beauty was the answer, then why do we have supermodels in 12-step recovery?
Yes.
If fame was the answer, or power was the answer, then why would we have dignitaries and diplomats and heads of state? It's nothing external.
Even Robin Williams.
It's nothing external.
Something was going on.
It's inside. It's an inside job.
Exactly.
And the inside job requires, A, you have to know you have a problem. B, you have to be teachable.
Yes. Because
your pride and ego, which was my downfall, my pride and ego kept me from seeking the help that I really needed at the time. And it wasn't until the culmination of tragic circumstances that I was left bare.
So.
And there's a lot of other kids out there, exactly as we're having this interview, who are going through that right now, who are meeting with the kids after school at this time and smoking a cigarette for the first time, or trying the joint for the first time, or trying a line of cocaine for the first time, or trying a sexual act for the first time. And if there was someone to break that cycle, the cycle, not just that which was ingrained in them from their brothers, sisters, mothers, and families, but break the cycle of the neural pathways of self-thought and self-doubt that says, you know what? If I keep on doing what I've always done, I'll always get what I've always gotten. And this is not worth living for. So I need to do something different.
And see, all of those acts happen at the highest time between 2:30 and 7 p.m. because that's the time when kids are getting off from school. Many of them don't have someone at home. They're walking home. That whole influence, the highest time was actually 2:30 to 6:30. And so by offering programs and services, and even with now the power of technology, when you go and speak to youth, whether it's here, whether it's in Utah or wherever, you can offer them ongoing support, because now through webinars, just like when I'm teaching with my businesses, I'm teaching a webinar sitting at home. I'm dressed from the top up in case I have to show them me, but I have individuals on from all over the world, Sierra Leone, Utah, Kansas, wherever. Well, there's opportunities for every time when you meet these youth, you give them a CME card, and so that they can be on your database, and you can have this ongoing connection with them.
And I wanted the kids too, though.
Latchkey kids. You're right. It did. It started with Latchkey. And that's why the YMCA has been so significant. The YMCA has been one of the best organizations that has constantly been on the forefront of helping young people during that crucial time. Even when mini bikes first came out, they had their I think it was called the NIPM program. And but constantly looking at in the forefront of what is going to be needed in order to touch lives.
Because what has always been hasn't worked. It's got to be different. We got to think outside the box.
Yes.
We have to be proactive.
Yes.
We have to be able to get dirty. We have to be able to go down there, talk to them, give up your experience, strength, and hope.
Yes.
Forget how you appear, how you seem. Because we've learned in maturity, the opinions of others doesn't pay the bills.
Right.
The opinions of others does not make for a soft pillow. So I am being self-effacing. I'm being open and vulnerable, not because it feels good, but I know the benefit of having done so, because others have done so for me.
Well, I know that we've covered a lot in talking about the foundation, but we've got about 10, 15 minutes left, and I'd like to know, what would you like to leave people with relative to you or about the nonprofit?
I would like to leave a legacy with Summers Drive Alive Foundation of being proactive, effective, caring and compassionate, and honest. Those characteristics may, at different times, be fleeting and transitory in the life of a youth.
Yes.
But having someone who says yes and means yes, no and means no, and has their greater good at heart,
Right.
doesn't care about the person on the left or the right, because one of them might have a hardness of heart. And I heard a teacher when I was in school, he came almost 50 miles each way to come to class.
Wow.
And he says, I do that for one reason. There's somebody in here whose life I will touch in a profound way. I don't need to
Yes.
know who he or she is, but just knowing that I've done that, my life matters to someone else, that means I'm a success that day.
And obviously he was a success because you remember him.
I remember him.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so I have the same mindset. I will go out and I will speak and I give my story to whoever has an ear to hear. Some have fertile soil of the heart, and that seed falls deep and germinates and
Right.
breaks open,
Right.
and transformation occurs in that life. And there's some, like going to a good choir service or a sermon, you get those feel-good feelings on Sunday, and then you're back in debauchery and self-service
By the time you get home.
by Monday.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can't be the arbiter of the outcome of the results.
Right.
I can only control planting the seed.
You know, hearing you talk about what you would like to leave, the honesty, the integrity, all of that, that didn't just start. That's without a doubt who you are.
It came through the fires of adversity. It came through the penal experience. It came when there was no one left. When the money, the family, the friends, who I knew, who was in my Rolodex. That was before the phone, young generation who's listening out there.
I still have one sitting on my desk, though.
Right? Okay. When all of that was gone, I was left. Like I
Yeah.
came into the world
Right.
completely new. But except I didn't have my family. Everyone that I loved was 3,000 miles away in Pennsylvania.
Wow, yes.
My mom and dad are still married, still living in the same house I was born and raised.
50 some odd years,
54
right?
years.
Wow.
To the
Wow.
present day. My brother's married with 3 kids, 30 minutes away from my mom and dad. So I had no one out here. I had never been in the penal system at all. I have a scuff with the law to go into youth authority or go into some of the other detention homes
Right.
that people have experienced before they go to the big house.
That wasn't your life.
I went straight to not only the penal system, but the most racially charged penal system in the United States of America. And I went in as a mixed race 27-year-old with a life sentence.
Wow.
And I arrived during a black Hispanic racial riot lockdown lasting 6 months.
So how did they classify you?
Because the state had me classified as African American, I got housed with other African Americans.
Yes, yes, okay.
But for me to raise arms against another man
Right.
because he is not African American during the heat of political uprising in the penal system means I'm now spitting on my mother. Because she is
Wow.
Italian and East Indian. So I basically said, take me. When put against the fire, raised knife against another man for the color of his skin. So I've been there at that come to Jesus moment where they said, we are going to do something to you if you don't do something to them when these gates rack. And I said, you might as well stick me.
Wow. You don't feel like that was already in you even before going to prison? You don't feel like that was
and
showing up in you even in high
It was
school?
because of having gone through it as a child. I went
Yes.
through that where my yearbook went from Abrams to Zimmerman. I attended more bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs than any Jewish person I met to the present day.
Yeah.
Okay, and I went through that racial tension, the racial dynamic growing up in the suburbs of Pennsylvania, and I had to stand for my belief system. And my belief system was humanitarian. That I am who I am. If that's not okay with you, then that's your problem, not mine.
Right, right. Yeah.
So I'm able to embrace who I am. And I don't get caught up in separatist ideology based on race, based on creed, based on national origin.
Right, right.
I treat others, the golden rule, treat others as you want to be treated.
Right.
Whatever you signify, I respect that, no matter what it is. And I ask you to impart the same respect to me.
So do you have any engagements coming up soon, or anything that you'd like for my listeners to know about?
Well, I'm working on assembling my business plan. This is all new for me.
Okay.
I have never done that.
Okay.
So I'm working on that. And sponsors, people who can sponsor me at the onset of this enterprise, I'm open to.
How would they get in touch with you?
They can call me on my mobile number, 310-993-9756. They can reach me on my website at keithasummers@gmail.com. And I'm working on my Drive Alive website, which will be, I already bought the domain, so I
Okay.
own it. It is www.drivealivefoundation.org.
Great, great, great. Now repeat the number again and your email.
The mobile number is 310-993-9756. The email is keithasummers@gmail.com.
keithasummers@gmail.com.
That's KEITHASOMERS.
Yes.
At
yes.
gmail.com.
I'm glad you spelled that, because they probably would have spelled it like summertime.
Right.
So
Thank you.
when you first got out, now I know that I volunteered in Chino prison for a few years, working with men that were getting out and helping link them to programs and services and that kind of thing. And a lot of the guys were, I won't say afraid, meaning, ooh, scared, but scared of coming back, because it was the law then, and I don't know if it's still the same, but they had to be released back into where their arrest was. So it's almost like releasing them back into the lion's den. They can't go somewhere else. They had to go and take residency where they were arrested, which I thought was really crazy, because if they want a better life, they're going right back in where they were.
They've changed
Was it that way?
They've changed that.
Okay.
It was already at the integration stage of being changed when I was released in February 2011.
Okay.
It is now in full bore application, where a prospective parolee who does not want to return to the county of commitment may make a request to transfer, if so doing would increase their chances of succeeding on
Good.
parole.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that.
So a lot of people have family members that are drinking and drugging. They don't want to go back there,
Right.
but they have a distant aunt, uncle, friend, a friend of the family who doesn't drink or use drugs, that's willing to provide housing
Yes.
for them.
Yes.
That the system has allowed them to make that transition.
I know that that's one of the things that there was such a high experience of the recidivism, with them just getting out and then coming right back in. And they were saying, one of the guys, Miss Herring, when I get out, either I'm going to my girl's house, or if she's still my girl, or I'm going to my brother's, and the same things are still going on. Yeah. And how do we get around that? And I said, why don't you just go somewhere else? Do you have to go there? And I had no idea that they had to, and they couldn't go anywhere else at that time. So I'm glad to hear that they can, because so often they wanted to,
Right.
and they couldn't.
I didn't have a lot of the environmental negative influences
Right.
that a lot of other guys do. I was quite fortunate in that way. So when I was returning, I was able to go in with my best friend, Dorothy. She had become a quadriplegic while I was incarcerated. Long story short, she'd rented a van for her son to go get a dog and clothes returned from an old girlfriend in Arizona. Her son was driving. She was in the passenger side. he took his eyes off the wheel, off the road, to pick up a CD that he had dropped. And he hit the graveled shoulder with the passenger side, front and rear wheel of the rental van, causing their van to flip, like falling off of Mulholland, falling off a very tall embankment, where they flipped over 20 times. Both got ejected from the vehicle. He got up, shaken and stirred, completely fine, and she was left like Christopher Reeves, quadriplegic from the neck down.
Oh my goodness.
So when I got out, she had already been in that position for about 16 years, since 1993. Almost 17. Wow. And so I moved in with her in Westchester, and I was her caregiver.
Wow, okay.
So she provided me room and board, and she didn't drink or use, and
what a blessing.
And she had worked at USC for 20-something years at that time. Mm-hmm. And I would be her assistant caregiver because she had another woman who was her primary caregiver.
Right.
But I would be there to do the physicalities, like lifting her up out of the bed, or when her electric chair would break, transferring her to the manual wheelchair. Right. And I was also driving her to work every day because she still worked.
She still worked
at USC in the accounts disbursement control office, full time.
Oh
so
my goodness.
I would drive her in her MV1.
What a spirit.
Down to USC, and she worked as a manager in that department.
Manager.
Yeah. And then she passed away on January 1st, New Year's Day, 2014, after doing almost 30 years in that state.
You're going to have to do something else about your memory, too. You remember dates like...
Yeah,
that's a gift. Heck, I have sometimes remembered my birthday or how old am I? I mean, my brother even just a few years ago, he's like, my nickname is Shub. He said, Shub, I made me a birthday cake and I took it to work and I looked at it and I think it had 40. Anyway, it was the wrong year. I said, Sonny, you're not that old. I mean, you're not that age. I forget what it was. And he's like, I'm not. I bet you don't forget your birthday. I mean, you just remember dates and numbers like. That's a skill set.
Well, this emotional connection to the dates. I think that has a lot to do with it too. That it was my best friend of 28 years, and she passed away.
You have people that don't remember their wedding anniversary.
Yeah, I guess.
That's something else. Well, again, I want to thank you so much for being on. It's truly an honor. I'm looking forward to us doing some things to help your organization get up and going. Give your contact information again.
It is Keith Summers. The phone number is 310-993-9756. The email is Keith A. Summers, that's KEITHASOMERS @gmail.com.
Okay, well, Mr. Keith A. Summers with the Summers Drive Alive Foundation, I want to thank you again for being on.
Thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate it.
Yes, and I want to thank all of you for tuning in. This is Sherita J. with Drive Time. Join me every Wednesday. I will have him on again because I know that we're going to have some wonderful stories to tell. So again, see you next week. This is Sherita J. See ya. Come on back at me. We've got a lot of things to talk about.
Yeah, sure getting down. But gotta take you higher. All right. You wanna do it again? You wanna do it again? Huh? Yeah, let's go on back. We gotta take you higher.
Power Lunch with Sherita J. If we could get more people to collaborate with our nonprofits, we could be bringing a lot more programs back to our schools because there's grants where there's been a music program or an arts program or fine language program cut. There's grants where individuals could bring those programs into the schools and collaborate. So that's why I never shut up about this. C360. That stands for Collaborative 360, and that's where we've launched a program where we are identifying the grant funders and writing the grants for our affiliates. That could even be you if you're not already a part of C360. And you know, Kim, again, I'm always touching on where there's grants. Even when you're doing your show, because you're touching on self-esteem, leadership skills, fighting obesity or whatever, you could be taking that into schools and grants could cover it when you do that. There's a picture with you with Oprah. You did something on the O Network.
I did a game show on the Oprah Winfrey Network. I was a co-host of a show called